Yeah, that was before I drove him over.
I'll call this meeting to order.
No need on.
Can we get a roll call attendance, please?
Yes. Commissioner Foister,
Present.
Lisk,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Nelson,
Not here.
Petroselli,
Here.
Chairperson Montague,
Here.
and Mayor Clark.
Here.
The first item is we have a public hearing. It's application. You can recuse yourself on the record if you want to wait a minute.
I will accuse myself.
An application for variance for an accessory dwelling unit, location M&M subdivision, lot A, town of Ridgway, block 32, lots 16 and 17. Address 357 North Lena Street, historic residential. The applicant is Russell Meyer, and the owners are Russell and Christine Meyer. And for the record, Russ sits on the planning commission and he's just recused himself and joined the audience. I think I'm ready to hand this over to TJ for our presentation.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes.
I love it when a plan comes together. All right.
What's that brick background? Looks like you're in the dungeon at your office.
Yeah, it's the wood shack in the back.
All right.
All right, so let's kind of run through this thing here. So as you mentioned, Chair, we have a variance request in front of you. So I'll just remind the Planning Commission that you're sitting in a little bit of a different situation tonight. Your purview is a little bit tighter since we're looking at a variance as opposed to just a regular development application. So I might, chime in a little bit here and there if the conversation starts swaying a little bit. But what we have is a request to increase the maximum allowable square footage of an ADU from 800 square feet to 97 square feet, for property at 357 North Lena Street. So here's our order of the meeting tonight. As mentioned, this is a public hearing, so we'll have to open the hearing after some presentations. We'll first hear from myself, staff presentation, and the applicant will have a chance to give a presentation. We'll open it up to the hearing for public comment, and then close that and have discussion, motion, and vote. So it's just the order of operations. And just for those in the audience, if there are any who aren't used to my presentations, I'm going to go through this pretty quick. There's a lot more information in the staff report that I won't necessarily be going over in detail. If the Planning Commission has some questions along the way, feel free to stop me, and I'd be happy to expand on anything along the way. So with that, as mentioned, the owners are Russell and Christine Myers. The property is zoned HR district, historic residential district. You can see the site here. It's north and west of Lena and Charles. And as you mentioned, the legal description is on the record as well. So this is a site plan of the entire property. The bottom right is the existing home. An existing single-family home does exist on this property. The proposed ADU and garage concepts are proposed and not on the property right now. If this application were to proceed, it would include a two-car detached garage. It's that building on the bottom left of this diagram here, and with an ADU above it. The access for the garage would be off of the alley. As noted in the staff report, staff was not able to identify any unique situations with the property, the land, and the property and the parcel seem to be consistent with neighboring parcels in the area as far as size, accessibility, and design and layout. The request is somewhat nuanced. It's kind of a difference between where the square footage is measured. And as articulated in the staff report, staff's interpretation is that the measurement of the square footage of a unit, a detached type unit like this, would be from the exterior walls. The interior dimensions, though, as designed and presented, are 32 by 25, which does meet the 800 square feet. However, because of that interpretation, we go to the outside of the walls, the exterior, and it turns into 897 square feet. So that is the difference.
Before you change the slides, I just want everyone on the commission to note this, the dimensions. Go ahead.
Yep, and I will point out for the record, apparently I put down 847 on that request. It's actually 897. So yeah, there's more on the interpretation of that in the staff report. I won't go into it now, but that is the request and the reason for it. Based on further analysis of the request, we did review the ADU criteria set forth in 746A of the code. And these are these are a summary of them, and we found that all of them are met with the exception of the second to bottom bullet on the left column that says may not exceed 800 square feet. So the rest of them, based on the narrative, based on the explanation by the applicant, and based on the lot, obviously we were not reviewing site design or layout for a building permit or for zoning compliance. We were just looking at the use and just general conformity, and all other criteria of ADUs appear to be able to be met at such time a building permit were to be sought. Similarly, we looked at it just from a zoning standpoint, including the zoning, the addition of the ADU and this detached garage, and all components. So they're all requirements of the HR zone district are able to be met. Appear to be able to be met. Setbacks, height requirements, a lot coverage, lot width, all of those elements as on this table here would appear to be able to be met. So here are your criteria. The criteria for a variance are 2 of them, and they're set forth in section 743J3 of the code. And the commission has 3 options, as you do in most cases. You can either approve the variance request as made, you can approve with conditions, you can deny, or you can continue the request. With that analysis, staff is unable to recommend approval based on criterion 1, the presence of practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships were unable to be found on this property. Those are typically tied to land and topography type things that are not applicable elsewhere. But hardship can be defined by a number of means. So therefore, staff does recommend denial of the variance request, finding that the approval criteria have not been met. And so we have the staff, the recommended motion. And then if so desired, we have 2 other motions for you, and they're in the staff report as well. 1 to approve the variance as submitted, and 1 to approve with some conditions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, or pass it on over to the applicant.
Any questions from the planning commission?
I have a question for TJ and staff. I'm unclear on where you got the interpretation that it was the outside of the structure. Because as I read it, I just looked up the actual ordinance on our Muni code, and it says 800 square feet of gross floor area, which would, in my mind, mean inside the walls. It's actually the floor area. The walls aren't floor. So
That was always my understanding.
I saw that as well. Seems to me like this is the crux of the question.
Yes. Yeah.
Does it really need a variance or what? So I want staff to clarify why you thought you needed to include the walls.
Sure thing. And when we speak about building footprint, lot coverage and things like that, it's always tied to exterior of structures. If this were, let's say, half of a basement, part of an interior, we would be looking at some of the interior walls. And we look to the building code for that definition, because it's not the building footprint, gross floor area is not defined in the land use code.
I think that, I have something I can add here. I think that the way the assessor assesses property is set by the exterior wall.
Right, because they're
And
not
I think
gonna
that-
come in your house.
And I believe that the IBC counts it as the exterior wall. So I think it's kind of part of the
Yeah.
industry. I don't agree with it, but it's kind of the way the industry has done it for many years. And I agree.
And oh, sorry.
Go ahead, TJ.
Sorry, just to reiterate or state again that with lot coverage, it looks at the exterior. We're never talking about interior.
Right, but when he reads
Right.
gross floor area, does
I
that
think so.
not differentiate that it means the floor area? Because if a wall is there, that's not the floor.
It sounds like TJ says that there's no definition of gross floor in our definition.
And is gross floor area used in the
No.
whatever? The IBC?
Gross floor area is usually a livable area within the walls in the industry and with the assessor and the building industry. So I think there's a nuance there that I think the assessor is required by state law to go by the outside measurements. Everybody else lives in the inside. So there's
Yeah, it's another one.
So with John's point, is it possible that we could just clarify the definition and not have to go through a variance procedure?
The definition would require modification to the definition would require an ordinance.
A clarification of the definition?
Yeah, it would require modification of the Ridgway Municipal Code to provide that clarity.
So we might as well just go through this and clean that up later.
Well, what's interesting is I think previously, I don't know how many times we've dealt with new ADUs in the last few years, but if I'm not mistaken, under when Shay was the planner, she dealt with it as gross floor area.
Yes, I had that experience building my house, that it was the inside and the
think
walls
we've had
didn't
some-
count.
Inconsistent
Interpretation.
interpretation of this, so, but I do think it's important that we be consistent going forward. And it does seem to me like, well, I think we should go on with the formal hearing and then we can talk about remedies. I just was curious because it does seem like it's a bit of a catch-22 sort of.
Anybody else on the planning commission? Question for staff.
I had a question about the bullet points on the criteria where it said a 90-day lease was required. I didn't quite understand that.
Can't be short-term rental.
Well, it says short-term rental right across from there. It says both short-term rental and 90-day lease from the same slide.
Yeah, so there are criteria that it
Proposed.
could, let's see if I can.
You can go back. I just see where it says minimum 90-day rental and then right across the short-term rentals.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of confusing.
yeah, sorry for the summary there, but there are criteria that you have to meet in order to short-term rent an ADU.
I'm familiar with that. I wasn't familiar with the minimum 90-day rental. How does that apply?
That's a criteria in the code for ADUs to be, if they're rented, to be rented out for a minimum of 90 days.
So they can only be rented for 90 days or more unless they fall into the short-term rental
Correct.
category?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's,
Now I understand.
that's something we need to fix.
Yeah, for sure. But I saw those two. It's like, what? It's confusing.
Yeah, the 90-day plus thing has always been how we discriminate or determine that something's not short-term rental.
Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question for you, TJ. Since we are tasked with dealing with ADU ordinances, what is your timeline for us to do that?
Well, in about, depending on how long the hearing goes, in about 20 minutes, we'll be talking about it some more. So I guess it depends on the outcome of that discussion and direction we get from there. I would say we're talking about months, not weeks and not years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
We're ready for the applicant to present.
You start. No, you start.
You brought me for comic relief.
Hi, Russ Meyer, Crystal Meyer, we live at 357 North Lena Street, Ridgway. Yeah, this whole process, you've seen my narrative letter, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on that. But we started this whole process probably about 2 years ago when we've been talking about doing an ADU for a while. We have plans for an ADU that meets the minimum building requirements, and we can go forward with that at any time. But after looking at this for a while, I decided, looking at the way the town likes to do things here, we want homes to be more and more efficient. We want them to run properly. And so I sat down and I redesigned this whole thing. And in the process of that, we were working on a municipal code, a little touch back to the narrative. And I asked the question, as we go with thicker and thicker walls, where's that interior square footage? Not trying to call anybody out, but we had somebody tell us that it was the interior living space. And I took that ball and I ran with it. Especially with those thicker walls. I think that's really kind of an injustice in the way it's set up today if it's measured from the exterior walls when you're trying to do that. So we went forward with a design that by county measurement in IBPC or whatever that is 897 square feet, but the interior living space is 800 square feet. Wasn't until much later that we realized, okay, we may have a potential problem here. I know that we're looking at doing ADUs, but this is gonna, as TJ just said, this is gonna take months to progress. I've been looking to progress this thing for a couple of years now. I was almost ready to go last fall, but my GC said, wait, you don't want to spend all the money on concrete blankets and all that. So we decided to push it out to this spring, and I'm ready to go forward. So that's my story. That's how we got here. I think when we look at the criteria, we can't meet both of them. Obviously, we don't have quote unquote a hardship on why we can't do 800 square feet. But I think we've got the other one covered in spades. We have covered everything that the town has as requirements or exceeded those requirements along the way. So we can't meet both, but I think we've got enough that, again, this is going to be long-term rental for locals. It's we've gone with very efficient design, plan for efficient heating and cooling of the place, all beneficial electric. We also have solar panels designed in there. So we've hit about 5 different subjects off the master plan, but we don't meet this one particular criteria. And I guess it really comes down to what the interpretation is. Is it actually the 897 square feet or is it the interior living space, as I heard? So that's what got us here.
And I agree with y'all's discussions on the interior 800 square feet. That's the way I have always taken it. And then the way it's worded is too, with the floor space, it never crossed my mind. And I think it was when Russ was having discussions with Preston in the fall that it came up and we were like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. But again, we've got a line of people who want to rent this, who've been waiting on it, and we're not renting it to make money. I saw an ad today that was $1,000 for one room here in Ridgway. Looked like it was a duplex. Our plan on this is to rent it the same way I was raised, 25% of the person's net income, right? It's not to, so it will probably be rented for $800 to $1,000. we're not making any money on this. We're trying to provide the housing and help the environment, because that's just who we are anyway. So, and I also tried looking today to see what the guidelines is that in on hardship? Because I asked Russ, I said, what exactly is a hardship? And we looked through and there's no guidelines on what a hardship is. So I kind of only half jokingly said, well, it's a hardship for people still sleeping on couches. I mean, I don't know that it meets a hardship for us, but that's something that I would kind of like to see more addressed as the ordinance gets changed. So I guess that's kind of where we're at. I mean, we could start today on the within or less productive, because those were the initial drawings. And then we pay for more drawings, more architects to take it out to the 10 inches. Is that what the walls are?
Yeah.
Yeah, to make it more efficient. So it leaves us, if it's not approved, it leaves us with a choice of, do we wait till whenever these ordinances are redone? Which I would not be surprised. It makes sense that they would end up allowing for that. And so it'd probably be legal in a few months. Or do we go ahead and pull the trigger or not and do it on a smaller design?
And I suppose the other option we have, besides going with the old design, is we could go forward with the new design, but we would have to pay additional costs for our tap fees. Is that right? TJ?
Oh, that your front house could qualify as the ADU?
Well, no, there is some provision in there that you can, I think it's more in the short term. But if you're not using it as a long-term rental, which we are, that you can, if you can go with, you don't have to necessarily meet those ADU requirements, but you do have to pay an additional.
I think
What
you
is-
do
what
have
is-
to build it.
No, what it depends on is how big your lot is. If your lot's big enough to have 2 units, then you can do that.
And we've got that in spades.
Yes, so you could do that. So then you build it as just a second unit. I think in that case, you probably, correct me if I'm wrong, Preston, but I think you probably have to do like a lot split or something.
Right, and you can't have two, principal or primary type dwelling units on the same
On
parcel.
one parcel.
Anything else would need to be an accessory definition, so.
Right, and the
Okay.
plans with the prior owner were already, I don't recall if they were submitted and approved, but for a lot split to put a full separate house.
It had approval from the town to do a lot split with some requirements. But that's not our intention here, and we're not developing
Okay,
it the way
let's
proposed, so,
get back to the business at hand.
thank you.
Are there any, do you have anything else you wanna add at the moment?
I don't believe so at the moment.
Any questions from the planning commission for the applicant?
No,
So
I was gonna ask about rent and they already answered that, so.
I just had a question. So what are the walls made of that are 10 inches?
We're doing SIP construction, so
Oh, that's right. I did see that,
structural integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is very efficient.
I have an unrelated question. Are you putting in wood burning stove?
I am gonna put in a wood burning stove, because we're going all electric, I don't want my tenant to freeze to death if we have a
That goes out.
power outage.
So it's also gonna have the plates on top for cooking. Again, we try to think of backup plans for if something goes bad.
Okay,
So that's built into it. And they're all, Russ mentioned earlier, and it doesn't really matter to this, but there's also a Murphy bed in the living room so that they can have company in 3 parking spaces. So
great.
we'll try to make it really good for them.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
I think now I open it to a public comment. Is there any public comment? Anybody on Zoom? No. Commission, wait, I guess next if I will close public comment, if there is no public comment. Closed. Now back to the commission. What do you guys got?
This is really tricky, especially the, I like that Russ said, I'm not pointing any fingers, but he did get direction from somebody on staff that it was interior walls. And I think that gets back to previous interpretation of the code was that way. And so yes, maybe it's the building inspector or somebody in that interpretation. I actually found a architecture site online that says the 2018 IBC in chapter 2 floor area says that gross floor area is the floor area within the inside perimeter of the exterior walls. So, I mean, I think, to me, the big question here is, you know, I almost think there is a hardship. Whether it's in the slight misdirection from somebody on staff, it was totally unintended, I'm sure. And then the fact that they're trying to do something that meets so many aspects of our strategic plan in terms of like workforce housing and energy efficiency and all of that. And then the other option is to say, hey, I think we need to, I mean, one of the things that we're going to talk about in a few minutes is updating our ADU regs. I said to a couple of you earlier that I was actually online this afternoon in line to testify at the state capitol about their ADU reg that's in front of them right now. And it was delayed so much that I wasn't able to do it. But so there's all sorts of movement on the ADU issue. And I think that we should definitely be looking at increasing that number, that 800 square foot number, and looking closer at the off-street parking requirements we have. So if we're going to do that, I know we might be able to do that quick enough that they could come back. Russ and Krista could come back and do it under that.
They're here for a variance.
I know, I'm just saying there's a lot of different aspects to this. And my main point, since we're actually talking about the variance, is that I believe there could be an argument for there being a hardship.
I would agree. Does anyone disagree with that?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Thank you.
Well, I think we need to get more opportunity for comments first.
I don't have any comments.
Okay, it looks like Bill might.
Well, I think I'm also thinking of practical difficulty. There is some, due to, for the same reasons, due to other precedents of interpretation that,
Yeah, I think we can call that either or, practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships.
Yeah.
I think there's an argument for that.
I think that combined with the fact that things are going to change this year.
But that's really not part of our.
That's not.
Round out here.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you, Michelle.
And I think it's on us to
Those
clear
are not votes, John.
our definitions.
What's that?
I think it's just on us to clean up our definitions, although I don't see anybody that says, oh yeah, I made a mistake. It's like, no, it just existed by no fault of anybody's, the conflicting definitions.
Or interpretations.
Right,
By
'cause if-
town staff.
The reason I asked, I did remove that it was a SIP house. But if somebody were doing a straw bale, you know, the walls are 16 inches thick.
At least, yeah.
We've had 6 or 7 houses built in Ridgway that are double wall. There's a foot between 2 walls.
Yeah.
And so there's both 6-inch walls. There's almost 2 feet of wall.
Yeah.
That eats up on the floor area, and the assessors, that's how this comment came about, is the assessor still assesses it as the exterior wall square footage.
Yeah.
And they've gone to the assessor and had this discussion with them. And that's how I became aware of this through a different avenue.
You ready to make a motion?
I've been.
Yeah.
Everybody ready?
Yes.
Go for it. Okay, I'm not making a motion yet, but I'm making this motion in the spirit of the ordinance will be and has been observed, and the public health, safety, and welfare secure, and substantial justice done by granting this variance. So my motion is that I move to approve the variance request to increase the allowable square footage for the ADU of 357 North Lena Street by 97 square feet, finding that the criteria set forth in RMC 743J3A has been met.
Second,
In discussion.
staff, any comment on that motion? We good?
Good.
Okay, can I get a roll call vote? Please.
I think since we're all here to do this.
Jennifer's not here, so.
Yeah, but she's not on Zoom.
Okay, well, is anyone, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Dang, that was hard.
Thank you guys very much.
Don't forget your water.
Nope. I do that.
That's a tricky one, but I think we're going to.
For the record, Russ is rejoining the planning commission. One moment while I catch up here and figure out which glasses I need to put on. I know that routine's come to that. The next agenda item that I am scrolling to is the town of Ridgway. So I'm
Item number 2, discussion regarding.
there it is. So we're done with the public hearing and now we're moving into work session, which is discussion regarding the 2024 planning projects and Ridgway Municipal Code updates. And I will hand it over to TJ.
DJ, you're muted.
Is this part of the meeting public or?
Yeah, no, we don't have any executive sections. We're
It's-
very transparent here.
I'm retired.
Nothing good on
It's all
TV.
me.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes, we are.
All right, cool. Got my screens all set up. You're able to see this hopefully. And just before we get too far ahead, I just want to, Max, if you don't mind showing your face and taking yourself off Zoom there or whatnot. So some of you, I don't think you guys have met Max yet. He's a new planner with us and he's been helping out with some of the research stuff and we'll be helping on some other Ridgway stuff. So I asked him to come here and throw him to the lion. So give him all you got tonight.
Hi, Max. Thank you.
Max, welcome.
It's a pleasure to meet you all. It's been a pleasure working on Ridgway projects as well. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help.
So this conversation is going to be my hope and maybe the way I'm going to frame the discussion is I just want to throw a slide up here, give you a quick little update of what we've done since the last time we met, and then open it up for conversation. Really what we're looking for as we put in the staff report or the memo was is there enough information to give us guidance on coming back with a draft or do we need to do some more research or information gathering, right? So that's the hope that we can just kind of talk through. So the first, and obviously this one we weren't able to get done to get into your packet, and we actually still have a little bit more calculating to do. It's just been kind of scrubbing the data has been a little bit difficult. So we're still working through it, but we did want to throw these numbers out there just so that you start seeing it and see the magnitude of scale of kind of obviously as you might expect residential zone districts. So these are the zone districts, sorry, residential future development. These are all just calculated from GIS. So, almost 50% is our residential. Then you start adding in the other residential components and you're over 50%. I was actually surprised that future development was second, but that actually makes sense when you look at the map. There's a lot of it. So that's actually some good opportunity there. And the other part that we weren't able to do yet is look at the future land use map and understand how that's broken down, because that will guide what those land uses on future development zone district might be. And then 15% commercial, general commercial. And I think kind of for me, at least the big telling part was light industrial, general industrial, that there seems to be very little property in town percentage wise of industrial and general industrial. If that's employers, that's employment, that's manufacturing, those kinds of uses, and not sure if that's.
Question.
So with that, I'll kind of open it up for comments, discussion, questions, and what you all might think.
I've got a question. These percentages are percentages of what? Are they percentage of the urban growth area or?
The total town boundary, I imagine.
Town boundary, yes.
Town boundaries that exist or?
Yeah.
Or there's an urban
No, what,
future?
no, it's just within the town's boundary or
Parcels within, with these zoning classifications within the.
Already.
it doesn't, it can't go outside the town's boundary because that, none of that's been annexed.
Yeah.
And it's not zoned. So these are just the.
That's my question.
Yep, these are zoning districts.
This, if you go by standards of communities similar to ours, are we balanced? Are we unbalanced, uneven?
You know. That is a hard one to gauge. Balance is a relative term when it comes to this land use classification. But Max, do you have any insights into the research as far as similar sizes and things like that?
Not with the surrounding communities that would be most similar to Ridgway. We haven't gone that far down the land use profile research.
Yeah.
TJ, I also have a question. You were saying that the two industrial zones total 4%, which, as you observed, is somewhat low. Is not a substantial portion of the future development land adjacent to that up to the north?
No.
And west,
Developed by industrial.
or
It's already
That's
some
already zoned.
industrial.
pardon?
It's already some.
So it's already, so
Yeah,
Yeah, the one side is light industrial and the other side is future development.
I thought there was some future development land beyond that.
On the other side of Laura Street,
west side of Lower Street is already zoned residential.
light industrial, the west side, yes. Next future development, isn't it?
No, it's zoned
It's residential.
On the west side, it's mixed residential.
Okay.
That was a rezoning of a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then the stuff, all that Wolf property out there is FZ,
Yeah,
with that triangle
Is that what you're
zone.
thinking
well,
of?
that is what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Which isn't far off, so you're on base then.
So there's room for industrial development.
I kind of disagree, Bill. I think that we have an industrial park, and I think and this is just talking. A couple of years ago, there was a developer from Telluride that came in and wanted to rezone the industrial park residential, and I was adamantly opposed to it because I feel like the industrial park, in my opinion, is one of the most successful subdivisions in Ridgway because it created jobs, created families and all that, but I wouldn't want to see an industrial park where it currently is, then another one over yonder or over yonder. I wouldn't want to have two.
No, that was my point. I thought perhaps that there could be some contiguous development to the west, which would be, of course, the Wolf property.
Yeah.
But there you
I didn't think of that, but yeah, it could, that would work. I mean, I remember I spoke openly in many public meetings against the rezoning to residential because I didn't want another industrial park on the other side of the highway or another industrial park out by Eagle Hill or something. I felt like one there is working well. It's not perfect, but I'm real proud of it.
And I know I looked at one point, and I haven't looked at this in probably 10 years, but part of the Wolf property was actually platted as a continuation of the area that's pretty much bounded by Amelia County Road 5 to somewhere.
To Laura,
Is it all the way to Laura?
it's all the way to Laura and it is north of not Otto, what is it?
Charles.
Charles.
Right,
So, and there's a whole street, there's probably 50 or 100. There's a
yeah, I remember
And
that.
they're all city, they're all 25-foot lots, all city lots.
Mhm.
I don't know if that plat, I think that plat still exists. I don't know if the town owned it, but it's still there. It was part of the original plat.
Correct, yeah.
100 years ago.
Yeah, it is.
So back to my earlier question, I'd be interested to know if we're headed in a healthy direction. I mean, no, Uray and Telluride are not like us at all. But there are other towns that must be similar to us, going through the same growing stretches. I'm just curious that we plan for a healthy future.
We can look into.
Yeah, I mean,
what
and on that
industries-
note, one of the big questions we're asking tonight is additional information needed? And what I'm hearing is that, hey, maybe we should go see peer communities around the region, see what those are. I guess that would be fine, and we could certainly do that. That isn't overly burdensome, if you will. Where I kind of wanted to make sure of that we're not headed potentially, or if we are, we need to adjust, is that we're not looking for some market analysis to start dictating or understanding the land use demands.
I have a question.
If we do that, which would give some really good information, I just don't know that it's one necessary, or if if that's not something that we could do. So we would want to, halt this and move in a different direction if that's where we wanted to go.
What are you gonna say?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Weren't these zoning districts reviewed with the master plan?
Yes.
I mean,
I think there's some history though that would be helpful to know, and that's that in my experience over the last decade, we've had immense pressure to redevelop and rezone general commercial property to residential. There's so much more of a market for residential than there is for commercial, at least historically in the last decade. That's what everybody wants to do. That Jackie may not agree with that.
no, I agree 100%.
But that's a problem.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's a 20th century problem, maybe not a 21st century problem. I think to your point, TJ, about the market study, I almost think we might want to find somebody who's pretty cutting edge that can say, in today's environment, typical commercial properties aren't needed like they once were. Retail is a tough go when in the world of Amazon and Best Buy. And, I just think it's something that's probably worth looking at. We've always saying that the town in my tenure has always been, let's make sure we don't make the mistake of eliminating so much of our commercial zone property that we, at some point we go, oh, shoot, now we need more commercial property. What do we do? I mean, you were saying on the side there, how do you rezone property when people own it? Well, people own everything. So, and rezoning happens all the time, often at the request of the property owner. But sometimes the town initiates a rezoning of some property that private individuals own, and they either like it or don't, and discussion ensues. But I guess my point is, it's probably worth looking at whether, that I'm surprised that historic business is as small as it is. The general commercial at almost 15%, that brings us to like 17%, 18% commercial there. But there's a certain chunk of future development that could be commercial in the future. I think we need to look closely at that and continue to grapple with the fact that, with property values the way they are and people wanting to move to places like Uray County, we're going to continue to be faced with developers wanting to scrap commercial property and make it residential.
Have you approved that in the past?
Sure. The Lena Commons over here is commercial property. One down on Lydell the one that's proposed just north of, just by the Adobe, just south of the Adobe.
Yep.
Just south of the commercial with the apartments on top, that's been made a mixed residential. Those were all commercial areas.
Out the road.
And then Jack Young coming in wanting to take that area and make that all
But we denied
residential.
that.
That is our biggest commercial area we have.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of pressure on that just in the time I've been here, so. And that's why when we go through these things, TJ is always like, this is taking more of your commercial property, and I think that's something we really need to be concerned about. And look at like what John is saying and understand, well, how much do we need that in the 21st century versus
Well,
20th?
and I think something that ties in here is parking and parking requirements. I think take across the highway, I think that was originally envisioned for like a big box
Absolutely.
store.
Or
And
several big
the
box stores.
parking
Yeah.
for that, et cetera. And I'm just wondering if, since we're about to talk about parking requirements, whether having or needing as much land for commercial square footage. I think that's changed in the last 25 years. So I think we might not be in as difficult a strait as we might think, so.
Yeah, it needs to be looked at for
I
sure.
want to chime in here. So I agree with what Pam said and also what John said. I mean, in looking at these, if we're going to analyze our land use portfolio, I think general commercial has been brutalized. And we need to reevaluate what we have there. I mean, I'm 100% in favor of what John's thinking about. Do we really need residential there? Do we really need to lose commercial? And then because we have, well, in my opinion, pretty good commercial, and if we zone it residential, then we can do commercial down the street, up the road by Orvis, or they're kind of like where it is now. And also, I think the historic business and the historic residential has probably been abused or not used correctly. And I think we should look at our current zoning districts and see how they've been used, and then see how we want them to be used.
I think that's where this information will be most useful, is when people come to us wanting to change zoning. I don't foresee that we're gonna go and rezone property in town because we think it should be different, unless someone were to come to us looking for a change.
Well, I'm not sure that's correct, but I understand what you're saying. I mean,
In
it's
general, it's correct, and I think I think what I was trying to say is that we have had a lot of people come to us wanting to rezone the property away from commercial and more
Right.
towards residential. Now, got to point out, general commercial allows residential as a use by right, and especially like live work kind of
generally just condition use.
conditional use, okay. And that's very 21st century. You know, we've always said, we don't want, you know, commercial areas that just are dead at night because they're only shops and there's no living there. So, you know, I think we need to really hold on to our general commercial and make sure we don't allow it to get swallowed up more than it already has.
I agree 100%, but also what you said about Amazon and about working remotely. We need to evaluate how we want them to look. I'm 100% in favor of keeping all the general commercial we have, but I think there's gonna be more and more pressure on us to change it. And I can see it coming.
Well, and that's how we approached that last application. We were like, no.
Yeah, but we should have 5 or 6, I mean, I don't know for a fact, and I'm speaking kind of off the proverbial record here, but I think most of most of Ridgway USA has been bought up by people who want to use it for residential use. And I've been trying to document that before I made that statement, but I haven't been able to get the truth from the buyers. But there's been a couple of big buyers from Dallas that have bought big chunks in there from Rob Hunter. And I think their plans are residential.
But it's currently zoned.
GC. And
And there's nothing that says that we have to allow them to do 100% residential if and when they come in to ask for development approvals.
I'm sorry, what you said we do?
No, we don't.
No, no,
There's
I
nothing
agree.
that says we have to
We're
do.
both saying the same thing. Two things that I can think of that we know we're gonna need that are large footprint items are a grocery store, bigger one, and healthcare. And healthcare takes square footage. Because here it will only be 2 or 3 stories high. But at some point, Cedar Point, I would assume, or anybody else is gonna wanna come in and actually build a health clinic. And whether that also includes wellness, chiropractor, more physical therapy, things like that. It has the potential to be a big footprint, and the community will need it as we grow. And also as we age. But we're still a younger town than Uray, and so people are still having families, and healthcare is gonna be a need.
You're right, and Uray does not have space.
No. I mean, and
to do that.
some point our public health department needs to move out of this tiny little, very old building that barely functions. So to me, that's a big footprint item that we need to keep in mind, along with just the conversation about general commercial.
I just think, when I moved to Ridgway, I thought Ridgway USA was a joke to see all that big lot. There were huge lots, 2, 3 acre, 4 acre lots. And I said, it's never going to be consumed as commercial. Now, 30 years later, I say, geez, we need to keep that, because of the evolution of life, I guess. But I laughed at it when I first came here, saying that was a dream that somebody would ever consume that. But now that's changed. My thoughts are that I don't want another commercial zone. Either out by Abbott or out by Orbis or down by Gated. That would be a disaster.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
sorry if I may, I appreciate the conversation and I've jotted down some notes. But
Give me the keys, yeah.
just in the interest of time, I think that I think we got some direction that we're not ready to solve this one. We probably want to do some additional analysis to help this conversation. And what I can do is I have a good colleague, a friend colleague who's an economic planner. I can just reach out to him and see if what some costs might be to do a quick gap analysis or market analysis of existing conditions and whatnot in Ridgway. We can also do some analysis or review of peer communities and bring all that back. I think everything that you're saying is correct. We're going to need to do, if that conversation keeps going in this direction, which is good, it returns over to looking at the zone district classifications, and that might be something that comes out of the conversation in the long run too. So does that?
You don't want us to keep talking about it?
My computer, half my computer.
Can hear
froze.
you.
We can hear you.
If we're gonna analyze what we have, can we figure out how many ADUs we have in existence while we're doing that? Would that be part of that same study? We've talked about that before.
I think that's a little different than what we're talking about here, but
Yeah.
Right, it's an aside that we should be able to come up with that. Did we lose you, TJ?
Looks like he's
Yeah.
frozen.
Or he's just jotting things down.
You look frozen.
Going, if you're.
sitting up there. You got the blue screen that we're start.
Oh, no.
Should have a Mac.
Max is still with us. He can take over.
That's not, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't have a PowerPoint in front of me, but it does sound like a fun idea for a future meeting. How about that? But he should be back soon. I don't have any notes from him or messages from him yet saying that he's totally not coming back. So hold
Yeah,
on,
let's
I
just-
think.
We'll give it a minute.
We
and
can wait
then,
a second.
maybe if y'all want to do a bathroom break or something, and then we'll get into, I think next is parking standards.
Oh, yeah, that ought to be a long discussion.
Which, Bill, you already
Yeah.
approach that subject, and then, affordable housing provisions, and then, ADUs. So.
Cool.
One of the things I remember so vividly in the master plan redo was walkability. You know, walkability, so that when we figure out where the future general commercial is gonna go, it's like, yes, people want to be able to walk there or ride their bikes there. You know, at what point do we say, yes, we need a tunnel under the highway to connect the
30
two
years ago?
sides?
Yeah.
What?
30 years ago?
Yeah,
It's over the highway.
because we know people will go back and forth in their bicycles and their kids and their strollers or school. And right now, I wouldn't send a kid across that street to go to school or soccer or whatever.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It's a problem.
It's always been a problem. We'll take a bathroom break. Where are you going with that dog?
Yeah, so
Good luck with that.
by the pound.
Yeah.
I just got a message that TJ will be logging back on now. Ish.
Good. Thanks, Max.
Ah. You want a dog? I'm just kidding, Darla, I'm just kidding.
All right, well, that was weird.
You're back.
Did you go to the Twilight Zone?
Apparently. The computer just froze and then I got the blue screen of death.
So the mayor said you need to get a Mac, just by the way.
So you restarted and it just went back to normal?
So far, I go with yes.
That's good.
Knock on
It's
wood.
like I'm a little delayed or something, so. Um. All right, I think I might be up and running again.
I think we were about to transition to parking standards. Is that right, TJ?
Yep. I guess just to put a pin in that one or tie it up, Preston, maybe you and I talk about potential next steps on that one. The land use.
On the land use portfolio, yeah. Yes.
Uh-oh.
Oh, again?
We can-
Uh-oh. Did it again.
Stu?
We can still hear you.
I think it did it again.
Can Christian
Yeah.
share his screen?
Max?
I don't think he has a presentation.
Yeah.
I could probably find it and go from there. I'll talk to TJ real quick.
Okay.
Let's see, you put the cell phone up to the speaker. It's been done before.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't let you know. Maybe right now.
There's some really good resources in here, that's for sure.
They say Buffalo, New York.
Of course they do.
I was born
Bandera, Texas, Bandera, Texas.
in a blizzard, December 1st, 1958.
So you were born in any one of 9 months.
Did they have snow? Yeah, I remember some relative writing me a letter, you know, when you were born, it was snowing and blowing. I'm like, okay.
It makes for great football games.
Wow.
Well, I'm back on a different computer. I'm afraid to do what I just did. So maybe, yeah, Max, if you don't mind, maybe trying to share the presentation from your screen. My deepest apologies. This has never happened to me before.
Must be quite the presentation.
Yeah.
It blew up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? Gosh.
By text?
No, when you
Oh,
go
when
back
you
in
came
for
back.
just a minute before you come
All right. So while Max is hopefully pulling that up, the next was the parking standards. And again, here what we did was we looked at the assessment from 2018, the recommendations from that, looked at the current code requirements, and then best practices and kind of the trends. So in the memo, kind of identified some of the trends that we're seeing nationwide in parking standards. And those trends are one, reducing the amount of parking requirements. And in fact, a lot of communities are reducing minimum requirements and putting, almost and starting to go with maximum requirements. So the point there being that there's a huge correlation between affordability and parking. So that's a huge trend. I think when we start talking about the content, the Ridgway context, we start realizing that unfortunately it is a drive-to town, right? You have to have a car there, but potentially you can strive to park once, and that's kind of that our kind of thought, if you will, on that. And I guess from there I would just turn it over to you all to have a conversation.
I'll jump in and say, I definitely think we need to enter the 21st century and reduce our parking maximum or minimums and maybe even institute maximums and get away from, I mean, I just think there's some great resources in the packet that you shared that are explaining the way people are thinking about it now and how we shouldn't be thinking in 1950s terms anymore about parking. You know, eliminating off-street parking requirements for ADUs is going to make them a lot more affordable to do, things like that. You know, I know it doesn't come without potential pitfalls, but there's just so many great examples of people doing this and how it helps. I mean, I'm just bringing up this article from Strong Towns called "Why Parking Minimums Have Almost Destroyed My Hometown and How We Repealed Them." You know, it's just, there's so many great examples of why we shouldn't be thinking in old-fashioned terms about parking.
I think I agree, but you know, it's like, well, if we don't require some off-street parking, the snowplows are gonna have a problem in the alleys and stuff like that. So I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying, in the alleys. So if like the ADU that we just saw, if they didn't have to park off street, so they would probably park right behind the ADU.
They can't park in the alley.
Well, I mean,
It's a public
there
right
was,
of way.
she said, ADU we just saw was over a garage and the garage needed access from the
But
alley.
what I'm saying is, if there's room, I'm not saying it's legal, I'm just saying you have to pay attention for snow removal. That's all I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I guess the thing I'd throw out is having lived here as long as I have, it used to be that we all just noticed and when there was enough snow that there was going to be plowing. Plow would come through on the first pass and we'd move our cars to the other side of the street and let them go that side. And you know, it's, a lot of it is just awareness and working within the parameters that you have to work within.
And I don't assume that our future residents will know that.
No, but I think if we teach them, we can, and it, you know, it's, the thing that I run into now that we have actually a carport with a little driveway. When the plow comes through and we don't do anything, I've got a huge berm to shovel.
They don't plow the shoulder on our street where you park ever.
Well, but my point is that if you park off street, you gotta, and
You have to
you're
dig your way out.
you're elderly, you gotta get your neighbor to come along and dig your car out for you. So there's just,
Got berms to get all the cars.
Well, if you park on street, same thing happens.
yes, I mean, there's,
Either way,
Yeah.
there's a big snowstorm.
One of the parking thoughts I've had is, you know, as our summer concerts and events get bigger and more popular, really promoting and either free or reduced car, transport from Montrose and then start charging for parking, you know, and somehow flip the incentive to not drive here because our concerts have gotten huge. And they're, you know, it just consumes the town for parking. So how do we gradually or not so gradually flip that around?
yeah, I think it's an education thing, you know, we gotta train people to carpool and things like that. It's an uphill battle, but, I mean, and then the other side of the coin is what a lot of people would say is that events are always gonna create overflow parking and you deal with it for the day of the event.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
So you need to convert a field into paid parking.
what paid parking would create a rebellion, I think. But maybe,
But if we're trying to change behaviors.
I get it, sure, I get it.
I think
The other parking concern I have here is we get a lot of people come through here in the summer with RVs. And I know we have some RV parking, but I don't know that it's enough to keep up with all the RVs that come through. Especially with me living right here on Lena, you'll get, in the summertime, you'll get RVs come park and take all those diagonal spaces across the street from.
Well, there's RV parking behind the hardware store that's, I don't know what the name of that street is over behind Drake's. All
Really?
I've never seen an RV.
I've seen one there before, but I mean, it doesn't get used a lot, and then I guess there's also some by the library, isn't there some?
In the lot behind the library.
Do we
And
encourage,
that's not overnight, but
No,
don't they
it's-
allow RV parking?
Right,
out there?
it's never given the town harbor that we point people there if they need to go there.
And especially
Certainly not
for-
intended for overnight.
And especially for things like the rendezvous, don't they use that extensively?
Right.
When they come through here, a lot of those vendors park their rigs out there. So.
Yep.
So I want to go on the record here that, I'm 100% in agreement with John on reducing the parking, but I also feel like there are some uses in our code that require more parking. And we need to look at that, especially short-term rentals. And, I think it's a huge impact in my neighborhood. And, I think it's, needs to be reevaluated. And then, like Pam says, if we have a healthcare facility, or if we get a larger grocery store, I'm not sure that we need to have smaller parking requirements for those, but I think we should look at that.
I'd be interested in looking at that. I mean, short-term rentals are a big issue in a lot of places, and maybe it's a way to, you know, disincentivize them by having them require some off-street parking. I don't know.
But the problem is they're usually built and they're through the process before they become short-term rentals. So how are you gonna have them have to have off-street parking to pull the short-term rental permit? Like it's after the horse is already out the
We
barn.
have standards and requirements for short-term rentals, so that's the way to attack it, like those requirements and standards. If I understood what you're talking about, right?
I think currently it's 2 off-street parking spaces for a short-term rental. And the house down the street from my house, I've seen 7 Jeeps for one short-term rental. And most of them, and a lot of them arrive on trailers, so there's a car pulling a trailer with a Jeep on.
Right,
So
and
it
then
could
the
be as many
Jeeps,
as 10
then the Jeeps come
Yeah.
off and they don't
Then
come
they
back
park.
on.
And
and they park.
I've asked them to park remotely, and they usually do that, but it's still an issue. I mean, like, take the truck and the trailer and put it down behind the library and drive the Jeep around town, but it's still.
Yeah.
It's like,
You're still.
So I think we get to, I think TJ's got our general
Yeah.
idea on this. Do we need to go further down the rabbit hole?
No, I think, and sorry, it kind of bounced around a little bit, but it sounds like, yes, well, maybe I'll just summarize it this way, that it sounds like we're moving in the right direction. It's probably worth us, the next iteration, giving an example, something for you all to digest, and rather than talking philosophically about parking approaches again. We want to reduce, we want to, incentivize parking once, and we want to see if there's some way to increase education. Now, there was also the conversation about special events, and I think that's, you know, that was a good problem to have for those events. So I think I have the direction, if that makes some sense, if I captured that correctly.
I think you did.
Okay, so we'll start drafting standards.
Cool.
Perfect. Next slide, Max. Ding. There we go. ADUs. And this one, just, you know, we've tackled, there's so many options and so many avenues to move forward. It can really be kind of anything. I think just a couple of things to think through. I think we've already thought about a lot of them. We've already talked about a lot of them. Couple of things to think about are, one, making them uses by right, which you already have in a lot of cases. So you're already checking a lot of those boxes. Gentle density, which I really like this term. And it basically is referring to the fact that an ADU doesn't count towards, you know, the number of units allowed on a piece of land or density calculations, right? It doesn't really count towards that. So if you're allowed to have one single family home, you're allowed to have an ADU in addition to that.
That's huge.
Yeah. And so you're already there for the most part, but what we can do is we can start looking at if that makes some sense. Right now, there is a standard in there that only allows one per single family home. I don't know if we want to have multiple. I'm not sure what kind of can of worms that would open. And I know that we were talking about kind of a sliding scale, if you will, of size of the ADU based on either the lot or the primary building, primary structure. And I don't know on that one if I really have a strong opinion one way or another. I think they both have downsides. They both have positives. There's a lot more equity conversation around that standard than actual kind of regulatory discussion. And then just that last bullet there, best practices. And again, I think the town does wonderful on this, that you know, in general, there's a trend to increase the allowance of ADUs. And I think that the town has a lot of them right now, and that's a good thing for a lot of reasons. So I think on this list of best practices, I think what we kind of came away with, at least I did, is, hey, town is actually doing pretty well in your current standards. A few things that we might want to tweak tied to number of them allowed and size is kind of, I think, maybe the two big ones. So with that, I'll throw it on over to you all and see what you're thinking.
I have a few ideas. One, I'd like to define the gross floor space as interior. And I believe my understanding of that is it would be the interior footprint. You're not calculating interior walls, but you're not counting exterior walls.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Clarify that you are counting interior walls, but you're not counting exterior.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah, anything inside the exterior walls is the gross floor.
Yeah, because you don't want to get ridiculous on having to calculate it, but I
Yeah.
don't think we should count the
I-
exterior walls.
Based on our earlier discussion, I think I totally
Yeah.
agree. We want to incentivize energy efficient building.
Yeah.
Like straw bale and SIPS panels, and people shouldn't be penalized their square footage because of that.
The next thing I would like to see is to tier the gross allowable living space based on the size of the property.
Oh, interesting.
And then in addition to that, I don't know how these would work together. I think that lot coverage should play a role in that as well.
You could just look at that, yeah.
I'm 100% behind that because the current size allows for a single person or maybe a couple. But as soon as you have a family, that 800 square feet gets real small. I built a couple of them, and I think we should be able to have ADUs for families.
Yes.
I
Well,
started
if you
my
put
family in 700 square feet.
If you put the stairs inside, then
No comment.
you're looking at more like 600
That's the one in the garage.
to 700 living space.
What was that?
I said if you put the stairs inside for the second floor, you're looking at more like 600 to 700 square feet of living space. Because you have to
Stairs.
come in the house and count the stairs.
Yeah, remember that was an issue with you.
And
That's a good point.
And the reason that I say it should cover lot coverage should be an issue is that Russ would be a perfect example, a small house on his property. We don't need to go into all the details, but basically, if the existing house is on the small side, then there should be some room there. And based on the size of the property, I think it should scale as to what the allowable living space is up from what it currently is.
But if you set it as a percentage, then you don't have to start mucking with square feet and who's big and how small and
I
interior.
think the percentage is tricky because right now it's 60%, and even if Russ's ADU was 1,000 square foot, he would only be at 25% of lot coverage
Right, so
with his house and his ADU.
so he might be allowed to build another.
I think it's gonna come into the water. I mean, once you start having more than 800 square feet, you have 3 or 4 people, then you have water usage. So I think the tap is gonna come back around to this, at least that's what I've been thinking. If you have a family of 4 or 6 people in an ADU, 4 or 5 people in an ADU, then maybe we shouldn't give a free water.
Well, that's a good incentive too.
that's
Like if you
true.
want to make the move to the larger unit, then maybe
gotta pay
you
for it.
pay a separate tap fee
Yeah.
and you don't get to hook on to the existing. That's a good point.
Yeah, so if you have, like, just hypothetically, if we have a 2-bedroom ADU at 1,000 square feet, or a 3-bedroom ADU at 1,200 square feet, where there could be a family in, we have to think about the water usage there in our current policy. But I think that's the only, for me, that's the only limiting factor.
Well, it becomes an
Especially if they
engineering
just-
issue too.
Well, it has to fit on the lot, but.
Well, the sewer
That's a
system,
big
you know,
setback.
carry.
So then if we did something like that, then we'd also have to potentially look at other incentives. I mean, that is one of the incentives now, is not having to pay that additional tap fee.
Well,
I don't
that can
think that's
remain an
much of an-
incentive for the smaller units. If you want to go bigger, then maybe you lose
But
that
yeah.
incentive.
Right now,
You still want an incentive for use, right? Regardless of their size.
I want more incentives than just the water tap, so I'm all.
Okay, so incentives of some sort, that's what I'm saying. is If we end up increasing the water tap, we still need to look at some other incentives potentially.
I think we need all the incentives we can come up with. I think it's the easiest way to provide housing.
Well, I
Easy.
think what we're telling the consultants is that we want them to look at more kind of outside the box approaches to ADU regulation, generally go bigger. But keep in mind the water use issue, because that's definitely
More people.
one of the issues. I think if we're gonna allow like a sliding scale of square footage based on the lot size and lot coverage, we have to have a maximum. I mean, an ADU shouldn't be any bigger in my view than like 1,200 square
I would
feet.
I don't think, I disagree. I think it should
I
be,
think
should be bigger than
1,500
a
is the
house, but.
max.
Yeah, I'm sort of with John on this. I sort of like that 9 to 12 range.
Well, 1,200, you get a good 3-bedroom and a 1,200 if you decide right, so,
Yeah,
you know, that's, you know,
I think 15 could be the ceiling depending on the.
15 is fancy. 15's a nice little house.
Yeah,
14, 15 is.
I think that's way too big.
I think it is too.
I would go 800 to 1,000.
You think 1,200 is too big?
The county's already gone to 1,200.
1,200 to 1,400
But it's
sweeter.
in the county.
Well, the density needs to be in the city.
I mean, we should have more density in the city.
Yeah. The county shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
Just to not throw another wrench in the system, but what I like the conversation, and that's some good guidance. I think what we'll want to do when we look at these is bring in in duplex as well, because at some point you're going to flip from an ADU, a single family home with an ADU, to a duplex, and maybe what we're talking about, I'm just throwing this out there, is that maybe we allow detached units to be a duplex. Because right now the definition only allows attached. And I'm sure that has unintended consequences, but I'm just throwing that out there too, that if what we're trying to do is get more units and square footage isn't necessarily it, then maybe we start looking into duplexes as well and allowing duplexes in similar situations where some of these impacts, such as lot coverage that we're talking about, are addressed.
I think the ADU has to be smaller than the main house, and I think
Correct.
having a duplex, I mean, I think limiting the size can be a footprint size or a lot coverage ratio, but I don't think the ADU should be larger or anywhere near the size of the house. It should be 50% or less.
Yeah, I
Just
think,
make your
I
reaction.
think we want to be careful. I think, nowhere near everyone is going to be so altruistic as Russ and Krista and create a de facto de-restricted rental unit. So the bigger we make it, I mean, part of the whole thinking with ADUs from the beginning was that if they're small enough, they should be affordable just by definition, based on the square footage. But look at the property value situation we have now. People can rent a 800 square foot unit for $1,500 if they want, because supply and demand
Or more.
or more. So
one
I
thing,
think we need to be careful. I think TJ's hearing a lot of good points
Yeah,
here.
and we're gonna be thoughtful about this. I don't think we're just opening the gate.
so TJ, right now, duplexes are not allowed ADUs. Am I correct about that?
That's correct.
Yeah, so ADUs are only allowed in single family.
For single family.
What's complicated is that we, in the last major land use code update we basically effectively doubled the density of the
Right.
town by allowing
Well,
home on every 25-foot lot. And you can put an ADU on a lot that has a single family home on a 25-foot wide lot. So we have to be really careful about allowing a lot more.
yes, but you can't do it in River Park and you can't do it in Solar Ranch.
Right.
So it's a little disingenuous.
Solar Ranch didn't they change there was a pretty strong movement, Solar Ranch, to change.
Changed it in Parkside, but
I
in
heard
River
there
Park,
was
you can't
two
have
parts of
it.
Solar Ranch women allowed.
There's 3 different HOAs in Solar Ranch, I think, and one of them definitely allows it, and at least one of the other ones was pushing hard to change it, so they allowed 3 or 4.
I think we've
HOAs.
given clear direction.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love the direction. We'll go. I can't see him because of my screen, but I'm assuming that Max is salivating right now to see what's out there and come up with some cool out of the box thoughts.
Great.
So I think that is
We
that's
skipped
it.
one.
I think we have the affordable housing.
Well, we don't have any real updates on that because we're still just going with, our whole approach on that is to just grab what's out there.
What's out there.
And we'll come back to you with a kind of a draft of the regulations based on all the stuff that's out there. I know Max has spent some time pulling through all the documents that you sent us, Preston, so thank you. And we're looking at getting codes drafted. So that's kind of just a quick update on that. I don't know if there's any conversation at the moment. That one we're moving ahead and would have drafts shortly, right, forthcoming.
That sounds good. Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Did you want our thoughts on anything else before we close this?
We're awful quiet tonight.
Yeah, I'm afraid to ask.
Yeah.
No, I'll just kind of summarize that I appreciate the conversation. It's been really helpful. It's and enlightening and directive. From the land use portfolio, we'll continue down that path that we're going and kind of try to see what we can do from a market analysis standpoint. Parking, we're going to start drafting those regulations and reduce the standards. And ADUs, we're going to come back with some out of the box thinking about concepts. So it looks like, and then on the affordable housing, so we're going to be starting to draft 2 of these and still do some digging and research on 2 of them. I'm still thinking that based on that we can continue moving forward with all 4 of these. Might not have all the drafts, to you next meeting, but we'll further at least the discussion items and the two research items. As soon as we can get drafts going, we'll get those over to you as well. But we'll continue working on all 4 simultaneously. I think that's still very doable. Unless you all think that there's a priority and say, hey, let's do this for next meeting and focus all your energy on that.
Yeah,
They would like the approach.
sounds good.
We're good. So we'll have a meeting to discuss this stuff, even if there are no applications?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cool.
Great. We have a few more things. I was about to adjourn. That would be premature. We need the approval of the minutes, and I did see a mistake in the minutes.
Me too.
Yes. Boy, Russ, we can read word for word, neck and neck here. I'll let you point it out, since it had your name.
It starts, yeah, it does. It starts off saying that Bill Lisk agreed to be the vice chair, and then it says that Mayor Clark moved to acclamation to reappoint me as vice chair. And so I think that's actually supposed to be Bill
Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say.
on the second action.
Yep.
Other than that, I got no problem.
it's, under the second action, Karen,
Okay.
to reappoint, it should say Bill Lesk, not Rothmeyer.
Yes.
He must have walked into your office while you were typing it.
No. At least it doesn't say Rasmus.
So, I guess I make a motion to approve the minutes with that one change.
Second.
Second.
No, I think that's got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining because they weren't there? Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. I think that's all. Well, let's see, do we have any updates from town council? We always like to know what's going on. I have an update, although it's probably Preston's thing to tell. But I'll go for it. It looks like we don't need to have an election because only one person. Is that official yet?
Yes.
Yes.
It is good.
There's only one person that is applied for the open seat, so there's no election.
No, there's four vacant.
There's 4 openings.
4 openings.
And we have 4
No,
people.
I'm sorry, only one person that wasn't the incumbent.
Right.
So that's exciting. John's gonna be our future mayor.
The ones in future.
Yeah.
Do you have any updates for us, John?
I don't think so. Because the planning related one is that, the preserve continues down the path of trying to make that for another extension because they're working on their, annexation issue and that's moving forward. So I'm pretty confident it'll work.
So council has granted it or it hasn't?
We did great.
You did.
But we actually directed staff to work with them on the length of time that they would need. They wanted like a 3-year extension, was the question?
We're looking for 3 years.
And I think we granted a 6-month extension and told them to get with you guys and figure out what they were.
An extension on a preliminary plat, is that what?
On their preliminary
Yeah.
plat.
Yeah.
The direction was to, for the parties to work together to figure out how much more time is really needed and what we're really looking at. So, we'll be doing that and they're fortunate.
Anything else from tech council?
That can be better.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah,
Managers reports are online. You don't want to know what's going on
Like the State of the Union for Ridgway.
Preston and I are
monthly.
have a 12-hour round trip to Manitou Springs tomorrow to make an 8-minute presentation.
7.
7 minutes.
There's a great cafe there, Adams, I think it's called.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a nice cafe there right downtown.
It's quite a ratio,
yeah, it's,
driving to speaking.
Yeah, tell me about it.
How come they're not just having you do Zooms?
What's the presentation?
it's student,
It's for,
energy impact assistance funds.
yeah, to serve as the town's half of we're going for a loan, matching commitment to be this energy impact funds for the ductile iron water line replacement project on coming down from the water plant. It's about 3,600 linear feet of pipe we need to replace to C900 PVC
What's it now?
ductile iron.
That's the one that broke last spring and created a boil order.
100 years old.
Dimension,
Not 100, but close.
Of the pipe?
Yeah.
8 inch?
more or less.
8 inch?
It's gotta be 8 inch, yeah.
I bet it's 8 inch.
We're find out for tomorrow.
I bet it's 8 inch.
Joanne can do this.
I guess that's it, with no, I don't know what the word is. Meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good job.
TJ, thanks, Max.
Ideas and-
Everyone will see you next month.
Also creative.